Let's talk about the next few days, because we know, yes, millions of people have voted, millions more have not voted. Latest news poll shows that the trend that seems to have been there for the past few weeks is sticking around, where we're sitting at 52-48 in terms of two-party preferred. In terms of the primary vote, worth seeing here that Labor is a little higher, in fact 2 points higher than when they were at the last federal election. Coalition pretty much the same, 34-35. Greens down to 11. One Nation up yet again. When will the commentariat, or will they all wake up shocked on Sunday, that the One Nation vote is up 3 points off the last election, almost at double where it was at the last election? That is going to matter, particularly in the Senate, and 12% of people who are sitting anywhere but what we have just mentioned. The key question, which about whether or not the government deserves to be re-elected, well, 48% of people say no, 39% say yes. About 63% of people saying that the coalition not ready to govern. That is a poll that has got worse since the election has rolled in. As for better Prime Minister, 51, more than half the country now saying that the Prime Minister should continue as Prime Minister because he's the better Prime Minister. 35% for Peter Dutton, 14% uncommitted. So, obvious question here. And Matt, I want to ask it this way. Minds made up or time to change? Because, yeah, OK, some people just randomly will throw a dart in their mind on their way to the polling booth. But with this change towards conversations about culture and stark differences that exist, do you think that that's an opportunity to change minds?
Look, I do think there's a lot of so-called soft voters out there, seemingly in the polls. That probably explains why the minor party vote is high. So therefore, there are people who may change their minds. I do think, as I said earlier, this whole conversation about Welcome to Country has got people talking, and I do think it goes to more underlying values issues. It's not just about this ceremony at all. It's also about how you view Australia and what you view about our place in the world. And there's no doubt, I think, that the Liberal National Parties and Peter Dutton are much more interested in protecting our home, our nation, and that's consistent, I think, with the shift in worldview across the world here, that we need to protect ourselves in these difficult times. So, look, that might help to some degree. But, look, I also think you're going to have a geographic spread as well, Paul, that a national poll obviously can't pick up. I must say I spent the last week driving up from Rocky to Townsville, and this week I'm south of Tropical Capricorn, hence the jacket tonight. It's a bit chilly down here for me, below the south Tropical Capricorn, in Bundaberg. And I've never had a better feeling. And look, that might be us up here in Queensland, but I think what James just said, maybe the western suburbs of Sydney, the suburbs of Melbourne, might be different as well than what you're not just picking that up in the national polls. So I think Saturday night could be very interesting. I'm just going to keep fighting until then because I believe we need to change the government.
Yeah, I mean, remember, 2019, you were telling us about what was happening, in the hotel out towards the mines, and about that sense about what was happening. And again, you're travelling, and that's what you're feeling. So important to note, again, right, here's the whole thing, right? No one knows what's going to happen on Saturday night, but the whole point is to try to turn around so what happens on Saturday night is not a surprise. OK? So if there is a change of government, it's not going to be a surprise because you remember Matt saying what he was just saying. If the polls are right, well, guess what? The science, all the rest of it, and we've told you about that for months. James, do you think there's still time for changes here, or the reality that TV ads start to disappear halfway through the week, the news cycle, obviously, as we get closer to things like Magic Round and Round 8 of the AFL?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think, the big cardinal sin of this campaign by Peter Dutton has been to save everything too late, which has meant that all this stuff that, we're like, well, you can turn it around, you can do this, you can do that, well, it's like, well, where was this stuff, months ago and weeks ago and even a year ago to talk about, things like, taxes and talking about culture wars and all sorts of other things, you could have been talking about. So it is late in the game. We saw how defense got blown off, the front pages by the Pope's passing, so that's what happens when you save everything to the last minute. Yet there are all these things where the coalition is so different from Labor, and they should have been pushing that all along. Now, that said, last night I had some report on my show, Campaign Confidential, about Werriwa and Whitlam, some independent polling, which suggests that those could very well wind up going over to the coalition, which would be huge. That's 2 seats right there. Another interesting thing, Paul, you mentioned One Nation, and there's another poll out there which says that One Nation is now the number 2 polling candidate in Hunter, where Dan Rapoport sits. So that is also really huge. I personally think, just from the conversations I'm having with conservatives around the place, a lot of people I think are going to give their 1 to One Nation and their 2 to the Liberals because, they feel like the Libs didn't do enough in terms of shoring them up. So I think One Nation could have potentially a really big night. But we'll see. It's going to be a long night.
Now, I wanted to just quickly mention Jim Chalmers. Jim Chalmers was out and about today saying, we've cut $1 billion off the debt. He does know that the debt this year will be $1,000 billion. And then it'll be eventually $1.2 trillion debt, okay? So, yay. 1/1000th of what will become less than 1/1000th, yet still he wants a gold star, James, and people in your profession, not you obviously, but the journalists sitting down, scribing away, the golf claps, he's racked up $1 trillion, he'll get to 1.2, but he saved $1 billion.
Well, 2 very quick things on that, Paul. I mean, number one, I just think it's so strange how in this country where I've lived for 20-some years, the political emphasis on the deficit has completely disappeared. 10 years ago, this would have been, just an absolute madhouse. But the other story that was less reported but deserves to be more paid attention to is the threat to our AAA credit rating because of the tens of billions of dollars of off-the-books programs that Albanese has been warned about since the start of his government, putting all that extra pressure on inflation and on interest rates. If that happens, that $1 trillion becomes that much harder to pay off.
Yep, 100%. All right.